Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thanks. Thank you, everyone, for attending here. It's top of the hour, and we're going to give it one more minute, and because I can see some folks still rolling in. So just so we can get everyone seated for today's webinar, and we'll be right back. Thank you.
It's got more people coming in, Brian.
That's good. A couple more I can see coming in. So give it a few more seconds if you like. Okay. What do you think, Alistair? You feel good? You ready to go?
Yep. I'm good to go. Thanks a lot, Brian. So welcome, everybody. My name is Alistair Grigg. I'm the Managing Director of Fastman. So thanks for joining us here today and for this webinar on information integrity in the cloud for the OpenText Content Suite platform and extended ECM. I am joined today by Brian Lapointe, who's going to present some of the webinar this morning. We're also joined by David Henshaw, who's sitting in the background. Some of you may know that David is our CTO, and thankfully he's able to join us this morning, normally based in Australia, but today is actually up here in the US. So thank you, David, for joining us as well. Happy to answer questions as we go through. So the topic of today's conversation, webinar, is information integrity in the cloud. So we all know that the cloud is becoming a far more important part of the scene these days, and organizations are moving to the cloud. 80% of global data volume will be in the cloud by 2025. The size of that is incredibly, sort of large when you think about it, but it's growing, and it's very much the mindset for organizations. It doesn't change a lot of the premise of managing the information, and it doesn't change the need to manage the information integrity or the integrity of your information. So we know that most of our organizations use their IAM systems for managing strategic information and critical information. So it's really important for them to be able to maximize the value of that information and to also minimize the overheads. There's no point in going to the cloud if what you're doing is actually increasing the overheads in certain areas of your operations, or to remove some of the functionality and the access to functionality that you're used to by working with your traditional on-premise systems, old on-premise systems. So to do that, we need to give you tools, we need to give you capability to be able to operate in the cloud as easily and as competently as you can when you're working with systems that are in your own data centers. At which point I'm going to pass over to Brian, who's going to do a couple of intros and polls. So I'll pass to you, Brian, and leave it to you for a minute.
Okay, thank you for that, Alistair. As Alistair just mentioned, I got a couple of polls, actually 3 of them. So appreciate everyone's participation in this today, and we'll start off with the first question here. And let's see here, and I'll launch it. Simple one for everyone, right? Is Content Suite Extended ECM deployed on-prem for you, or in the cloud? And when I say cloud, it could be, it could be the OT cloud themselves. It could be you're hosting it with a third party like Azure, AWS, or Google. So I see a whole bunch of folks here, have been running Content Suite for a long time and so forth. So hopefully we'll get some good feedback here. Right now, Alistair, it looks like a good amount. Oh, okay, it's changing a little bit. Yeah, it's looking like, I'll close this in a minute here, collecting responses, about almost 70% on-prem still, which doesn't surprise me. Looks like we have some folks in the OT cloud, and then others talking about being in a third party like Azure and AWS. So interesting. Yeah, so people are making the journey for sure. Let me
Yep.
close this question. Thank you, everyone. I got another one coming up shortly.
It does ring a bell, Brian, that the on-premise, there's still a high number of people running on-premise, but when people do move to the cloud, they don't want the experience to change. So that's really one of the key points we're talking about today. So
yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. Let me launch this one with GoToWebinar. How long have you been using your content suite? Just kind of level set. Quick question here, right? Have you been brand new to it under a year, less than 5 years? You know, longer than 5 years, obviously here. So first few, looks like first few folks coming in are saying longer than 5 years. So we have a very experienced group so far. I think we're still collecting a few responses. Appreciate everyone who's participating. It's always good to have some interaction, and it just, quite frankly, as a presenter, it's really good to level set the conversation for today. So just like it's kind of similar to the results from before, where like 70% of the folks have been running Content Suite for over 5 years, and I kind of assumed that from looking at the attendee list that we get on our side here, and then it's split between 1 year and 5 year thereafter. So it's saying like 13%, 15% using it for 1 year, and another 15% for 5 years. So interesting. Let me close that down. Thank you again. And I got one more. Let's go launch. Here we go. Over the next 3 years, how will you be using your Content Suite system? And so this question's really towards, traditionally, especially with the, on the last poll, several of you said you've been using it, for 5 years and so forth. So you started off using it for records management, that traditional Content Suite, content server, live link deployment. We're curious to see how many folks are moving towards extended ECM, whether they want to connect it to their SAP system, Salesforce, obviously the Microsoft ecosystem with Teams, maybe asset management type solutions with Maximo. So, it was interesting. I think when the votes first came in at Alistair, I think everyone immediately went to Content Suite, but then it shifted to a trend, right? You can see it, it's like saying 60, 67% is trending towards extended ECM right now. So that's where people are looking.
Yeah, that's reflected, isn't it, in the trend we're seeing with our customers around the world, that extended ECM is far more part of the conversation now than it was 2 or 3 years ago.
So that's it for the first few polls here. Hey, Alistair, I'll be back, obviously, later in the presentation here. And I just want to remind the audience, we do have a chat section that's being monitored by myself, David, yourself. We'll answer questions towards the end of the presentation too. So encourage you to use the chat section of the GoToWebinar today. And with that, I'll just right back to you.
Thanks, Brian. And just by the way, I don't have a clock in front of me, so if I'm running over, tell me. I just realized that I don't actually have a clock sitting in front of me, so
I'll keep a close eye on it.
I want to make sure you've got time to cover off the products and the solution sets properly. So one of the things that we've done at Fastman, many of you will be familiar with Fastman for our products over the years, our permissions manager and access manager and so on and so forth. What we've realized in the last year or two is that more and more of our products have sort of grouped into, ended up into groups of solution sets. And they're really around this concept of ensuring security and integrity of information, enterprise information. So what we've done with our products is we've aligned them with 3 or 4 basic solution sets, which we're going to talk about in a minute or two. And as Brian said, we're setting the scene here a little bit as to why this is relevant to organizations and customers as we move away from just managing libraries of information, but more worried about the information itself. And the content the material that's within that content. So Fastman's about ensuring the security and integrity of information, enterprise information, and we do that through our products and we do it through our services. We do it through the concept of trusting your data. So there's no point in having tools and capability to be able to manage your data if you don't trust it, or if you're not heading towards a place where you can say you trust it. And many organizations we've dealt with over the years, the reason they've put Content Suite or Extended ECM in and hooked it up to their front-end systems and so on is to be able to trust it as part of those processes, as part of those business processes. And by doing that, we want to be able to trust the underlying tools and solutions that we're using as well. It's not just a matter of trusting the data, but trusting the processes that sit around it. And it's not saying that the content itself is any different. It's just that the context that's provided around that information is seen a little bit differently. So we trust your data, very, very important. Once you can trust your data, then organizations, and I don't just mean individuals, but an organization as a whole can start driving that data. So we've talked about value, and organizations like OpenText and SAP and so on talk about the value you get from your information. So we want to drive the data towards value. We want to drive it towards supporting the business processes that you have in place in your organization, and that your customers and our customers and your customers ask us to provide systems and solutions around. It's very, very important that we're able to do that. So once we've got the tools, once we've got the processes, once we've got the solutions in place to be able to trust our data, then we can drive it towards value for our organization and for our stakeholders and so on. So at the same time, the amount of data is exploding. So, you know, in the old days, 200, 300 gigabyte data store was a reasonable size. Nowadays, we talk 20, 30 terabytes is not unusual. You know, 5, 10, 15, 20,000 users accessing it. We've got customers, we've got external stakeholders, we've got multiple systems. You've got front-end systems that are accessing it in real time, transactionally as we go along. Cloud is a big deal with customers. We talked about that. We've just done this quick poll here in this call, but it's really, really important. But cloud changes the paradigm for a lot of organizations in terms of how they actually achieve the previous 2 points. How do they trust the data? How do they make sure that their access rules are set correctly? How do they make sure that the data, the metadata is maintained accurately? How do they make sure that the business is able to access those functions and those capabilities without having to go through multiple layers of service providers and incur the cost and the time delays related to that? So our products are very much designed around and have been evolved around enabling organizations to continue to manage their data and to manage the integrity of their data as they go through that change. Now, also, those changes are applying to people who continue to operate on-premise, because the architectural changes that are taking place with products like Content Suite Extended ECM are not just happening to deployments that are happening in the cloud. Those changes are coming back into on-premise deployments. As you upgrade your systems to the 21, 22 sort of versions of Content Suite Extended ECM, you're going to start adopting the same types of models and processes or architectures as are used by OpenText themselves and other cloud providers for these platforms. So it's important to be able to grow and to evolve and to you know, support those changes as time goes on. So what we've done, as I mentioned before, is we've taken our products, our traditional products, and over time, as we've seen these changes take place, as we've worked with our customers as they've gone through those transformations, we've both evolved the individual products, and we've also aligned them into solution sets. And we say they're built for the cloud because all our products are cloud certified in our world. The Permissions Manager product is OT cloud certified. We certify all our other products for the cloud. The data transformation tools that Brian's about to talk about are in use with customers in cloud deployments. So it's not a new thing, but likewise, they're also up to date with the products, with the change of the core platform as you upgrade your on-premise system. So it's not just a black or white either or situation. It's a general move of you know, technology and so on. So we've aligned them around these 4 main pillars, if you like, if you want to call pillars. It's a word we've used in the past in the OpenText world, but we've grouped them together. And we also realized that, for example, Permissions Manager and our Access Manager product, which you might have heard of, they work hand in hand. And likewise, the data transformation tools that Brian's about to talk to, there's a set of our products that work hand in hand. They can be sold and they can be deployed, or I say bought and deployed individually, but they can also be bought and deployed as a set and working together as a set. And likewise, the permissions and access control set solution set works hand in hand with the data transformation set. And digital signatures we've talked about previously. So our DocuSign relationship's still very strong. We do a lot of work with them in various parts of the world. And at the end of it, we talk about services, and I'll cover that off towards the end. But anyway, that paints the scene a little bit about where we're going with these products and why they're important to our customers and what our customers are seeing and feeling about how these products add value to them. So in which case, I'll hand over back to Brian and move down.
All right. Yeah, thank you for that, Alistair, and for that information integrity in the cloud overview and essentially how to achieve it. Next up, let's talk a little bit about a few scenarios where those solutions are being applied, and we can illustrate it against a customer story. But before I just jump into that, as I mentioned, I put some polls together before today's presentation, so I'm going to use them here. So just to kind of level set it, let me just kick it off right here. And again, I really appreciate participation in this stuff. And here we go. Essentially, what are we asking here? Do you need to change the structure of, and this is relevant because you have a lot of, we already learned that people have been using OpenText for over 5 years right now. What kind of changes do you need to do? Are you transitioning right now from the old way you were using it, and now you're trying to move towards extended ECM, and you need to make metadata changes, access permissions changes, the folder structure needs to change, those type of details. So let's see. Looks like the vote's coming in. It's heavily towards I need to make bulk changes, or they're planned to be. So I mean, it tells people that it's a living, breathing system, and we continue to modify it. It sounds like for our business needs as they change and so forth. So yeah, 89% need to make some bulk changes or plan to do so at some point. So thank you for that. I'm going to close that down. I got one more. And we're going to talk a little bit about self-service. Are you planning to introduce more self-service for your business? And are you doing it? Maybe you're not sure, or it's more, to provide more flexibility over the process. So you may have had a real centralized IT administration of it, and you're trying to give more to the business. Or it's, as you go to the cloud, we'll kind of bring this concept up. Are there fees and costs that are associated with third-party hosting and stuff like that that you're concerned with as you go to the cloud too? And so that's why you want to have more control and self-service.
It's interesting, isn't it, Brian? That's an interesting split. 67% saying more flexibility, providing to the end users. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and most people haven't really gone to the cloud yet, so they still have that control, and so they probably haven't experienced some of that other question there about service fees and third-party vendors.
True.
So good. All right, so that sets the stage a little bit. Thank you. Again, the chat is there for everyone who needs it. Feel free to, David Henshar is on the line, our CTO, Alistair, myself, and then we'll kind of go over Q&A at the end here. So just moving along, as we mentioned before, we're going to talk a little bit about some customer stories here, specifically this one here. Last year we did a few customer spotlights, and really the idea was for our customers to kind of share best practices with the Content Suite community and essentially highlight a few high impact scenarios. Most recently we did was Sonoma County Public Utility District, aka Snowpud. And essentially, they began their journey, probably like a lot of folks on the call today, a while back. They began their journey with an on-prem Content Suite platform, primarily for records management use case. And then, like many Content Suite users and so forth, their usage has expanded to other, high-value use cases. And in their situation, they connected up the SAP system and rolled out extended ECM. Kind of just to basically move towards the business workspace model and they're basically managing their equipment and then their work orders through business workspaces tied in with SAP. So content and context, single point of truth, that type of concept. But not only that, they also are, like again, many folks, decommissioning legacy shared drives on the network. And then they need to migrate all that content into the content suite system is a very important use case. And as anyone's been through migrations, this can take some time and it has complexity to it. And it's been an ongoing effort for them that started on-prem at Snowpud, and it continues today in the OpenText cloud. Okay, so they started in two different environments as they went through it. And then like many of these migrations, and I said, they tend to take time, and they involve various knowledge workers in the process because you have different departments that have different concerns about their content. And so what did they do? They use a tool from Fastman, the bulk data manager, as we call it. And then what it does, it lets the different Snowpad departments participate and really take responsibility for completing their migration, their work, using their existing staff. No coding, no scripting required with the bulk data manager. And as I previously mentioned, Snowpad started using it on-prem. So they got familiar and comfortable, and it worked for them well, obviously then. And then they moved it to using it in the cloud. They did the transition to the OT cloud. And it really was this continuity was very important to them as they moved to it. And it's something to consider when you're making your infrastructure changes of like all the different tools that you have that you're using to manage your on-prem system. How will they work in the cloud? Are they compatible? How will you interact with them and so forth? So it's something worth considering. And it's obviously a nice have that you don't have to go buy something extra or learn something different just because you're transitioning to a different deployment model. Worth mentioning here, BDM helped in the decision to move to the OT cloud sooner because they were able to continue using the same tool for migrating their content, and then not only that, bulk updating the metadata, updating the records management, category attributes, as we all know how Content Suite works. And this was really where the Fastman solutions are having strong effect, and like as the theme of today, increasing their information integrity. So as you can keep that information up to date and relevant, so they can search on it, find it. That's what it's all about. Little thank you to our champion over there, Lori Goatee, for sharing her Fastman story last fall. We always appreciate that, and and worth mentioning, these Fastman solutions have been invaluable in providing Snowpud the control to also efficiently manage their access and permissions too. It's not just about the data transformation, but they use permissions manager over there to streamline not only just having access and a view to the permissions, but the user onboarding side of the process that they have. Every time they need to make changes on and offboarding, they love to use permissions manager for that too. Next slide, Alistair, I appreciate it. So our theme is information integrity in the cloud. So let's talk a little about this. This leads us now into permissions and access control solutions. Okay. Over the past several months, even years, Fastman has delivered numerous enhancements to our access and permission suite, really driven by the customer feedback. And we've done it in a method it's very useful to cloud deployments. As customers prefer to relinquish that, that core IT function of hosting it yourself on your own bare metal and so forth in your own data center, and you move to a cloud service provider, we're finding the delineation where the business needs more self-service, and the Fastman Permissions Manager, Access Manager, really fills us and delivers this value. And I kind of highlighted a few of those areas here, if you could kind of think about it as you go to the cloud. And they include, first and foremost, that dashboard view of your access and being able to take and make the changes and have the control to make the changes. It lets you do it in a very safely and with confidence through a dashboard that works this way. And then with the permissions manager, it also includes rollback, and that really is your insurance policy. So if somehow you made some problem, remember when you're dealing with a cloud, you don't have full control anymore. having the tool to be able to fix the problem quickly and safely is invaluable. Okay, first and foremost. I also like to point out that the permissions manager, access manager, it alleviates that need for creating ad hoc reports. The effort to develop and maintain these reports over time. Many of you have been doing this for over 5 years, some of them much longer. Going back and revisiting these web reports and things of that sort is tricky business. So this lets you avoid having to create and maintain custom. And that's the word, is removing custom from your deployment. It helps to increase the integrity of your system.
Yep.
This third point that we're mentioning is starting to pop up for cloud deployments. It's something you may not realize, or it may come into a situation for you, but it reduces the frustration if you don't have system admin access anymore when you move to a cloud. Whether you move to the OT cloud or another cloud. Right now, you're controlling the whole situation in your own environment. When you go to a cloud provider for this, do you have system admin access? Can you still effectively control and make the bulk changes to your CIS model in real time without having to rely on a third party? So Permissions Manager gives you that advantage. And so this is when I talk about where that delineation is that we're seeing in the important value in making it easier to move to the cloud, because it takes the friction out of the process. We mentioned that Snowpud likes the user onboarding. This has been a very popular feature, and it remains that way, even more important now in the cloud, to be able to streamline and make that accurately, quickly handle onboarding and granting access to your system. And then we have this very popular, we call it compare groups feature. Again, being able to see, test, and verify how access is set becomes very valuable in the cloud.
And it's funny, that one, isn't it, Brian? Because that's an old function that's been around since the start of the product, pretty much. And it's just one of those things that people continue to get value from. It comes up in conversations all the time.
Yeah, you're gonna when you go to the cloud, you go to a different environment, you're gonna think about how to handle these situations. And again, it's continuity and consistency, and it's out of the box. Some people come to us that we're considering doing a custom tool of some kind, right? And then it's like, it's already there in place, a little training, it's out of the box, it's supported, it's tested, all those good things. A few more points before we move on, Alistair. It's just that, are you gonna, when you move to the cloud, do you need support for containerized deployments? So when I talk about innovation from Fastman, we're aligned very well with the OpenText cloud roadmap. And so we support the containerization. Permissions Manager works really well under that model and so forth. So we're proud to support that. And then as we saw, a lot of folks, right? They talked about supporting or looking to go to extended ECM, business workspaces. So we've added in a lot of nice new support within Permissions Manager from an innovation point of view for not just managing permissions and access, but also managing roles on business workspaces. We have that capability right now.
And it's interesting you raised that.
Do when you need to do it.
Sorry, Brian, I should have waited. It's interesting you raised that, because everyone sort of looks at roles and it's a sort of a golden screwdriver. What's the word for it? And it's just sort of a fix for everything. But it sits on top of the permissions model, and there are a lot of moving parts. And we could spend an hour just talking about all the different moving parts around access and permissions, including roles. So we're skipping through a lot of these bullet points here, but that's a really key point here. This area has a lot of moving parts in the system, all of which make sense and all of which have relevance to specific requirements across a true enterprise system like Content Suite or Extended ECM. But it's really, we could spend a long time talking about that. That's true. Sorry, okay. Next slide.
Yeah, like as you make the move to the cloud, there's an important growing role that Fastman solutions are playing. And what they do is they help you achieve that return on investment and overall success that you're looking for. And so thank you for this slide right here. This includes essentially this includes evaluating the various service options available to you that you'll find listed as items within your paid request catalog when you move to the cloud. And it's something to consider. And these are incremental costs, and they can be surprising to on-prem content suite users moving to the cloud, as much of this work was previously handled by your in-house system administrator, right? So this is where self-service is even more important in the cloud, being able to do more things yourself and continue to do this. And we help to diminish this dependency. And what we did from an innovative perspective this year is we introduced the introduction of business administrator access with permission manager. So now you can have business administrator configurations, and no longer do you need to really rely on system administrative rights to manage most access and bulk changes you may want to make to your CIS model. So even if you lost system administrative access, you can make it up with business administrator rights and have that self-service that you're looking for. And this approach lets you keep more control over content suite. And when it comes to return on investment, it reduces your overall service fees from going to the cloud too. And one more slide for me, Alistair, if you like. And as I started to illustrate with the Snowpud user story when I first started presenting, having the ability to transform your data is critical to maintaining its information integrity, right? And this is where solutions that let you load taxonomies and bulk update metadata on existing content in Content Suite have a real high impact for you. This will improve the usability of your Content Suite system and help avoid those, as I mentioned, the request catalog fees you experience with cloud deployments too. Fastman overall solutions offers several solutions within our data transformation family. For example, being able to deploy a cloud application to your document controllers that enables them to make the changes they need has a real strong ROI and high impact for them. Gone away is that back and forth with an IT developer using, like an Excel spreadsheet where they have to fill it out and then send it back to IT to do the load. You can just do it yourself with a powerful client application. No scripting required, and it has its own built-in spreadsheet to make the metadata changes that you may want to make to it too. Our bridge connector comes in handy when you need to move content to another location within your Content Suite platform. This is when you're restructuring your folders and moving content around. This is very helpful. It's driven from a dashboard, and you're able to monitor the steps and ensure quality control in the process that involves multiple people and jobs that are happening simultaneously. So very handy. And then lastly, and actually interestingly here, is the extract tool. Essentially, this ensures that you can get your data out of the system in a shareable format with another collaborative system. This brings you peace of mind that you're always in control of your data. And as you move to the cloud, this type of a tool becomes even more valuable, that you have the control on your system to do what you need to do. And with that, I'm done with my piece right here, Alistair. I'll hand it right back to you. You can kind of wrap it up, and then maybe we'll do some questions.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate that. So just to summarize what Brian has just covered off here. So we have fundamental. We fundamentally believe that as operators of OpenText systems, you deserve the tools that you need to do your job. So our products are built on customer requirements over many years. As Brian's explained, each one of them is now built into a solution set, so they talk to each other, they work together as a set rather than just as individual products. But the products themselves still stand alone in their own right. But we believe, as I said, that organizations such as yourselves need or deserve tools to do the job properly, to maintain those efficiencies and avoid the bottlenecks that we can all end up with as we run these systems over time. The one thing we haven't touched on yet is our services offerings, and we're talking about products today, and most of you primarily will know Fastman from our products rather than our services. But ironically, we come from a services background originally, and we still maintain the services as an offering for our customers, and where customers, for example, have a strong relationship with an SI or with OpenText professional services or an internal services capability, obviously we work with them, but these services actually come to their own when you start to access the knowledge that we have and the experience we have with the deployment and use of the products and the business scenarios that they are involved in. So we start off with a set of pure consulting services. We do all that sort of stuff. I don't need to explain to you what that is, but we also get involved in migrations and upgrades. So we do upgrade systems for customers, which for a lot of customers in North America and Europe would be surprising, because then, as I said, they know us from products, but we do operate and maintain and upgrade systems for our customers. It's really important for us to keep in touch with the real world experience that you people, that you folks are living with, and that does it. And again, in the same way, we do our managed support offerings for customers. So day in, day out, we've got people who are doing support work, and they're using our products as well as doing pure sort of OpenText admin and support type activity. So if you have a need around those, the one area that we do that customers in North America primarily will see more often than not is the enhancements we do to our products. So if you have a specific requirement that can't be met out of the box by by bulk data manager or BDM or permissions manager or access manager, then you are more than welcome to talk to us about how we can enhance it specifically for your requirements. So something like access manager, for example, which we didn't really talk about a lot today, but for those of you who are using a lot of read-only licenses, access manager is a really good tool for managing your exposure, your licensing risk around use of read-only licenses, which is not to be dismissed. It's real, and that product is a really good foundation for building other controls for other purposes and other reasons inside your organization or inside your system. So restricting what people can do, what functions they can actually use across all of their user interfaces, for example, whether it's a mobile device or a Enterprise Connect or the pure web, the smart view or the classic view, things like that. So, but that's where you'll probably see our services more often in this market or North America and Europe than you would, for example, in APJ, because in APJ we do a lot more of the managed support activity. So that's my summary, Brian. Have we got any questions we need to address before we move on?
Yeah, let me dig in there a little bit. I got some. Here we go. Here's a classic one. Here's someone I've looked at permissions manager at past Enterprise World conferences, right? Because we've always attended. How is it different from out-of-the-box content suite?
Interesting question. Okay, two parts to that question. We're really looking forward to seeing people face to face again when we can. So we're kind of hoping that OpenText World this year is actually face to face. Just a little plug for that one. So we really enjoy that direct contact. So yes, we have shown permissions manager to a lot of people. How is it different to out of the box? You know, traditionally that was a difficult question to answer, because it provides a means of doing things rather than the absolute ability to do it, and the means to doing it means that you can do it efficiently, quickly, and easily, and safely, and transparently. So you can see things in permissions manager that you can't see out of the box. As Brian mentioned before, auditors love it, for example, because we've got customers that buy that product purely to support their audit obligations, because auditors need to be able to see who has got access and why access has been granted and what structure is. So, for example, which group supply has public access been turned on accidentally, which is not visible through the standard interface across the board? How do I search for access? How do I remove access? All that sort of stuff. Auditors love it for that point of view. So you can actually get some really good support friends in the organization just simply by showing them that you've got that ability now, that capability. But as Brian mentioned, as we move into the cloud, it's a much easier question to answer, because you can't do things in the cloud that you can traditionally do often on-premise in terms of accessing parts of the system. So the business administrator access, being able to turn things on or off, being able to use usage and the object and usage privileges side to enable parts of the permissions management function for users who are in the business users without having to go to your service provider to get things changed or turned on. The BDM, to be able to migrate content yourself directly to structure, to move things around using the bridge connector. These things all, I've jumped away from permissions manager, but they all have a greater role and a more valuable role in the cloud deployment and in a modern architecture containerized type of model than they did previously. Personally, I find it's a much easier argument to make, or easier case to make, both for us as vendors and for our customers as internal service providers in organizations. And that's how permissions managers evolved. The support for containerization, the support for the business admin function, those things have changed over time, but the core functionality, the place that product sits, or the role it plays, it really hasn't changed very much, but the value certainly has changed, Brian. So that's where I would answer that question. And I think we can demonstrate that more easily in a more focused permissions and access sort of manager session, which we haven't got time to do here today.
Yeah, but of course they can anyone wants to reach out for that, we can quickly dive into something like that.
For sure.
Something very specific as a follow-up here, it sounds like, as always, people need to get something done, right? Can you change permissions on a second or sub-level folder? It looks like they got to do it across over 500 locations, and it takes a long time to complete it manually, right? So can you do that? And then one more question: can you find public accessible content in bulk changing too?
Of course, no problem at all. Both those questions. First half of the question, yeah, absolutely. And as volume of content grows, and as extended ECM becomes the primary version or iteration of content suite that's been used, the content explodes. Yes, you can find and change permissions on specific items in your environment. We support, for example, the permissions manager runs on collections. Customers who are using it already will know this. But collections and the use of searching, saved searches and so on, means that you can do a lot of those things that you're talking about very, very quickly and easily and safely. If you have a problem, all the things like rollback and so on are all supported in that context. So if you've got for example, if you've got a 10,000 workspaces spread around your organization, around your system, all in different parts with different and you want to go and find them and change the permissions on specific documents or specific folders or whatever it is inside those workspaces, permissions manager will let you do it. You can do a search for public access and remove it with a couple of clicks. Now, the time it takes to do this sort of stuff, a lot of the time is actually that work up front to find this in the click, 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 click. The endless clicking that you've got to go from place to place to place, and the piece of paper you have next to you that you've got to keep notes. You don't have to do that with permissions manager. It's all in front of you on the dashboard. So anyway, I could go on and on. You know me, Brian.
Yeah. Hey, I got one more that's kind of nice here. Somebody needs to load a large quantity of email files and also voicemails for archival into Content Suite. They want to know if the BDM tool can be deployed to their business users. But I think they're asking about what's the professional services, and then the transmission, throughput, things like that. So I think they're concerned about file type. Can you do those file types, and how long is that going to take that transmission time? That's what it seems like the question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, at this point, I would actually ask David to jump in and answer that one, because that seems to be something that you've dealt with just recently, David. If you're there.
Thanks, gentlemen. So yes, in both cases, Brian, we're agnostic of the content. So we simply pick up data and transport data in fundamental terms. So voicemail files, no problem. Email files, no problem. There is a little bit of conversion work using some of the OpenText utilities in the email case, just because of effectively the proprietary formats that OpenText use for storing email content. But they provide a nifty little conversion utility that we can run post import with BDM to generate the actual content in email format and in the proprietary format that OpenText use. The throughput question is always an interesting one. Obviously, it's a function of the scale of the customer system and how they've architected their overall solution. We're using the web services for the import process, so it's really a function of the infrastructure and architecture of the system. But not uncommon to see throughput sort of 3-4 documents a second on a small system. And there's a number of papers from OpenText that talk about the web services and their throughput and what they can achieve and how to architect for scale.
Good. And Dave, before we wrap it up, one more question for you here. I'll let you answer this. What version of Content Suite do we support? And do we support containerized deployments? I think Allison and I already mentioned that, but in your own words, maybe provide that feedback.
So the containerized is a big tick. So of late, we've done a lot of work ensuring we're container ready for the OpenText containers. Fundamentally, they're version 21.4, 22.1, I think 20.4 off the top of my head. So fairly much on the current versions of OpenText or Content Suite. More or less, that's reflective of where OpenText are at with their containerization and the versions that they support. If we look at a bare metal or VM deployment, Brian, depending on feature sets that the customer requires, we actually support all the way back to version 9.7 in some cases. But more or less, most of our customers these days are running on 16.2 plus and would have access to all the features that we've been talking about today.
Very good. Well, Alistair, that's it for me on the chat side here. I'll let you wrap it up if you like.
No worries. Thanks, Brian, and thanks, David, and thanks everybody for coming along today. We've covered everything, a lot of stuff at a pretty high level. What we would offer to you and we suggest to you, if you'd like to drill into the permissions manager, or sorry, the access suite, or the data transformation side of things at all, then reach out to us. Contact details are on the screen, or you can go to our website and just do a contact us. It'll come straight through to one of us. We can get back to you quickly. For those of you in North America, I'm going to make an ad hoc offer here. David is here for 2 weeks. He's actually in California this week and next, and he's got some time next week in particular. If you are interested in having a conversation in our own time zone, normally, of course, he's based in Australia, and with COVID, it's been hard to travel around. So it's really the first time for about it's actually the first time that we've seen each other face to face for 2 years. So he's here in the US. So please, if you've got any requirements you'd like to have a chat, reach out to Brian, and his details, as I said, are on the screen. And organize a call. We'd love to be able to do that, and I'm sure David would be. He loves talking to customers about problems and requirements. So on that note, I think I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, David. And at that point, I guess we'll wrap it up. Is there anything I've missed, Brian? I think it's
very, very well done. Thank you so much.
No problems. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Have a great day.